In a world that's louder, faster, and more connected than ever, why do we feel so distracted, so mentally drained? Maybe it's not about adding more to your mind, but learning how to clear what's in the way. We're living in the middle of an information storm where every screen demands our attention, every sound competes for our focus, and our minds rarely, if ever, find true rest. It's a constant race. People chase life hacks, productivity tools, and secret systems, all in the hope of becoming sharper, faster, more elite. But what if we've been running in the wrong direction all along? According to the Stoic philosophers, true personal evolution doesn't come from adding more apps, more strategies, or more stimulation. Real change begins from within. There is no magic button to hack your brain, no shortcut that makes your mind operate at its highest level instantly. If anything, there's only a path, and it leads back to yourself. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." It's a powerful reminder that wisdom isn't found in what we gather from the outside world, but in how we process and respond to it from the inside. When you stop fighting your own thoughts, when you stop reacting to every little thing, when you stop rushing to keep up with everyone else, that's when your mind finally starts to function with clarity and purpose. Ironically, what makes you feel 50% smarter isn't learning more, it's letting go. Letting go of constant stimulation. Letting go of distractions. Letting go of excess. And what remains? Focus, depth, insight. In stillness, your brain doesn't shut off. It becomes sharper, more aware, more dangerous, because now you are fully awake. And in a society half asleep, a person who is truly awake is a rare and powerful force. So, are you ready to turn inward? If you are, drop a comment. I'm ready. Because the true enemy of intelligence isn't ignorance, it's distraction. Most people believe that the opposite of intelligence is simply not knowing enough. But that's not the real danger. The bigger threat is the overwhelming noise that prevents you from thinking clearly at all. In an age where content never stops, our minds have lost the room to breathe. There's no space left to think, no stillness left to feel. And without that space, even the sharpest minds go dull. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that wisdom isn't about collecting knowledge, it's about clear vision. Not about having more time, but using the time we have with purpose. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And today, we don't waste it on rest, we waste it on distractions. Every moment lost to short videos, endless scrolling, and fractured thoughts is energy given away. Energy that could have been spent living fully in the present, seeing clearly, thinking deeply. We don't lack time to grow or to become who we're meant to be. What we lack is silence, stillness, presence. Because the intelligence you're looking for, it's not out there. It's already within you, buried beneath layers of noise and automatic habits. Think about the true masters, warriors who meditate before battle, philosophers who sit in quiet before writing a single line, monks who remain calm while the world spins in chaos. They don't move fast, they don't talk more, but they see deeper. And that's not weakness, that's power. Stillness is not escape. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is control. If stillness is the doorway to inner clarity, then learning to hold it even for a few minutes reveals a strength most people never tap into. When you can sit in silence, even for just 5 minutes, without being dragged away by your thoughts, overwhelmed by emotion, or craving external stimulation, you begin to touch a rare kind of strength. It's not the kind of strength that needs to be shown or proven. It doesn't shout. It simply is quiet, steady, and deeply grounded. The quieter you become, the more clearly you begin to perceive what truly matters. As noise fades, your inner world begins to resemble a still, clear lake untouched by wind, smooth and reflective. From that calmness, your senses don't shut down, they awaken. You begin to feel each breath, hear the smallest sounds you once overlooked, and notice subtle details like the truth behind someone's eyes. While most people rush through life seeing only appearances, those who live with stillness start seeing the essence. What's real? What's beneath the surface? In a world where everyone competes to become faster, louder, and busier, constantly multitasking and splitting their focus, you'll become dangerous in an entirely different way. By doing less, by going deeper, by seeing more than others can. When everyone else reacts to every impulse, you stay still and observe. When people rush to speak, you take your time to listen. When noise is the default, you choose silence. And from that place, you don't just become a little wiser, you become unshakable. Because distraction isn't just a modern problem, it's what makes you forget who you truly are. Strong, thoughtful, clear-minded. You don't need to change who you are, only remember. And remembering takes stillness. Part 2. Becoming dangerous without violence. Real danger doesn't come from big muscles, loud voices, or aggressive energy. It comes from presence, the grounded, calm energy of someone who has trained themselves from the inside out. In today's world, where people are constantly triggered by emotions, headlines, and social media feeds, someone who can pause before reacting and observe before speaking becomes uniquely powerful. It's a kind of strength most people can't fully understand because they've never felt it in themselves. And this power doesn't come from degrees, job titles, or external authority. It's the result of self-mastery, training your mind like a disciplined inner warrior. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This isn't just a quote. It's a call to live deliberately, with precision. Violence is primal, but Stoic danger is refined, shaped by awareness, wisdom, and restraint. Even a frown, a pause, or a quiet breath at the right moment can completely shift the direction of a conversation, an argument, or a decision. That's power. When you live with this kind of intentional focus, your actions, even small ones, carry weight. You're no longer just reacting to the world. You're seeing the whole board, and you know exactly when to move. But most people miss this. Why? Because they're living half awake, distracted, overstimulated, and numb to what truly matters. The danger of a Stoic lies in their ability to cut through that fog, to hear what others miss, to notice opportunities others overlook. This isn't sharpness built on aggression. It's clarity shaped by silence. And in the end, intelligence itself becomes the weapon. After learning how stillness creates unshakable power, let's look at someone who mastered it while leading an empire. Marcus Aurelius, both Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, was living proof that a person can be dangerous without raising their voice or hand. As the ruler of one of the world's greatest empires, Marcus didn't just lead by command, he led with discipline. He wrote meditations in the middle of war, restrained his emotions, and refused to let impulsive reactions guide his decisions. Rather than using fear or force, he chose stillness, always acting with full awareness of even the smallest consequences. When his soldiers rebelled, he didn't strike back immediately. He didn't let anger take over. Instead, he paused. He observed. Then he responded with clarity, fairness, and calm precision. That's what made his enemies fear him. Not because he was cruel, but because he could see straight through them. To become dangerous doesn't mean becoming violent. It means becoming someone others cannot easily shake, pressure, or control. When your mind is calm, everything becomes clearer. You breathe with intention. You speak with care. You stay silent when it's powerful to do so. And when you act, your actions are cold, sharp, and exact like a surgeon's scalpel. Nothing wasted. That kind of awareness isn't automatic. It comes through training, staying alert before speaking or moving. And that training puts you one step ahead, not because of tricks, but because you understand how things work. That's why observation isn't a bonus skill. It's the root of all wisdom. If you don't see, you won't know. And if you don't know, you can't choose wisely. The most dangerous person in any room is rarely the loudest. It's the quiet one, watching closely, already predicting the outcome before it begins. And that leads to an important and paradoxical truth. What happens when you no longer react automatically? What if you feel emotion rise, but you don't let it take over? Maybe the moment you do nothing is the moment everything changes. Don't miss that moment. Number 3, stop reacting, start responding. One of the fiercest battles Georges St. Pierre ever fought didn't happen in the ring, it happened in his mind. There was a time when fear overwhelmed him. Before fights, his hands would tremble, his thoughts would race. Even before stepping onto the mat, panic would break his focus. As one of UFC's greatest fighters, Georges didn't just train his body, he trained his breath. After every mental breakdown, he came back to deep, slow, conscious breathing. He practiced meditation, martial arts breathing. Whether at noisy press events or facing ruthless opponents, he learned to steady himself through breath. And once he mastered his breath, he mastered his emotions. No more reacting, no more being ruled by fear. He became a fighter who responded calmly, clearly, and in control. That was the foundation of a true champion. We just saw how Georges St. Pierre mastered his breath to control his mind. Now let's look deeper, not into technique, but into what breath gives us when practiced with intention. Stoicism doesn't go into detailed breathing techniques like martial arts or yoga do, but it speaks with complete clarity about the result of mindful breath: inner steadiness, clear thought, calm action in the midst of chaos. Stop reacting, start responding isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a transformation. A shift from living under the control of your emotions to living with intention and presence. Think about it. In moments of pressure, a heated argument, a stressful traffic jam, or even a text that triggers a wave of anxiety, most people react on impulse. Faces redden, voices rise, they act before they think. That's not a decision, it's a survival reflex. But someone with a stoic mindset doesn't let instinct run the show. They pause, they breathe. Because breath is the bridge between body and mind. When you slow it down, when you breathe more deeply, something powerful happens inside you. Your nervous system shifts from tension to calm, like a warrior gently resting a hand on the sword, but not drawing it. Not yet. The emotion is still there, but it doesn't flood you. Instead, it becomes something you can see and work with. You notice more, hear more. And most importantly, you create space to respond with wisdom instead of reacting from raw instinct. But here's the thing. This doesn't come from reading a tip online. It's not a trick you pull out in crisis. It comes from practice. Quiet, daily practice. Like a swordsman, slowly repeating movements thousands of times alone. With no opponent in sight, you must train your breath in everyday life. While walking, while washing dishes, while waiting at a red light. Because when real pressure hits, you won't have time to learn how to breathe. You'll only have what you've already trained. And breath control doesn't mean forcing or suppressing. It means harmony breathing, as if you're having a conversation with your body. The truth is, your brain responds more to how you breathe than to what you think. Breathe well, and your mind steadies. breathe poorly, and your heart races. Your thoughts scatter, but one calm breath in traffic, during a fight, or in the middle of heartbreak can anchor you instantly. Those who live in constant reactivity are always reacting to the world. They are shaped by their circumstances. But those who breathe, who observe, and then choose, they shape their circumstances. This self-mastery doesn't need to shout. It radiates like a silent force field, a steady presence others can feel. Calm, focused, dangerously composed. Over time, this kind of breath practice reshapes you. You no longer get pulled around by emotion. You ride them like a skilled rider on a powerful horse. You don't blurt out words you'll regret. You hold silence like a blade ready, but never reckless. We just explored how breath, when practiced with intention, becomes a source of calm power. But breath is only the beginning. True mastery comes when stillness holds its ground, even in the chaos of life. Until the moment is right to speak or act, conscious breathing becomes more than a technique. It becomes a way of living. It becomes a quiet but potent source of inner strength. And here's the paradox. It makes you smarter. Not because you've gained new knowledge, but because you see more clearly. And often, that clarity is the most dangerous thing about you. You're not easily shaken, you're not easily tricked, and no one can just sweep you away with noise or pressure. Sometimes, all it takes is one conscious breath, but that breath has to be real. Number 4, self-mastery and stillness in chaos. In a world that never pauses with notifications, emails, messages, and demands all calling for your immediate attention, the ability to sit still and not react instantly has become a kind of modern superpower. But don't mistake this for passivity. It's not withdrawal. It's one of the most powerful and intentional actions a person can take, the act of mastering themselves. Stillness isn't just the absence of noise outside, it's the presence of space inside. It's an internal environment where each thought can be observed, considered, and measured. From this mental space, clarity arises not from more information, but from deeper awareness. And without that awareness, a person becomes easy to fool not only by obvious lies, but by their own subtle, familiar thoughts. Because here's the truth. The weakest thoughts often wear the most convincing disguises. I can't. It's probably not ready. I just need more time. They sound logical, but underneath, they're driven by fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of not being perfect. Stoicism doesn't teach us to ignore or bury our emotions. It teaches us not to let them rule our decisions. When you can observe your thoughts without becoming them, everything shifts. You move from being led to leading. It's a quiet shift, but incredibly powerful. Because someone who lives this way is nearly impossible to manipulate. Take Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years during apartheid, he faced injustice, isolation, and the kind of emotional weight that could break anyone. But instead of feeding his anger, Mandela practiced self-awareness daily. He made a conscious choice not to be consumed by hatred. In an interview after his release, he said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." That wasn't weakness. That stillness made him strong enough to do what almost no one else could: unite a fractured nation. He didn't react out of pain, he acted out of purpose. And that's why he became unshakable. Today, your battlefield may look different, but it's just as real. It's in your own mind. Each day, hundreds of thoughts compete for your attention, draining your focus and your energy. But here's the incredible truth. After all, the real battle isn't about silencing the mind, it's about learning to sit with it without being pulled in every direction. You don't need to shut out every thought to find peace. You just need to master one thing: the space between thought and reaction. When you learn to pause even for a second before responding, something shifts. You stop being driven by reflex. You become the observer. And from that space, you don't act because of pressure, you act because you've chosen to. Now imagine this, just 5 minutes a day. No phone, no goals. You simply sit still, watching thoughts float by without judgment, without grabbing onto any of them. That isn't traditional meditation, it's mental martial arts. Like a warrior refining their blade in solitude, you're sharpening your attention. And in doing so, you begin to remember, you were always strong. You just couldn't see it buried under the noise. Because what makes you dangerous isn't how loud you are, how fast you speak, or how much information you can absorb. It's composure in chaos. It's your ability to remain silent when the world is screaming, to stay calm when others panic, to choose intentional action when everyone else is still caught in reaction. So, let me ask you, if this message speaks to you, leave a comment. What has been disrupting your stillness lately, and what will you do to reclaim it? Your story matters. I want to hear it. Number 5. Emotional intelligence. True intelligence doesn't come from books. It's not about knowing more or thinking faster than everyone else. The kind of intelligence that commands respect, the kind that feels quiet but sharp, calm but powerful, begins with something incredibly simple. The breath. Breath is more than survival. It's the switch inside your mind. Control your breath, and you access your entire nervous system. Just one slow, conscious inhale can open up the space between your thoughts, and from that space comes clarity, stillness, and presence. But without that space, your mind gets swept into chaos. You chase thoughts. You react before thinking. You live in a constant loop of stress and fatigue. This is something monks, warriors, and philosophers have always known. They didn't seek power by being louder, busier, or more dominant. They trained their breath. They mastered their presence. That's why someone like Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with unimaginable power, still ended each day by writing in a personal journal. To observe himself, to prevent his emotions or ego from taking control, to breathe and remember who he truly was. He knew not every thought is worthy of trust. Many are just leftovers, old fears, echoes of past criticism, or a fragile ego trying to protect you from discomfort. And if you believe every thought without question, you hand over the steering wheel of your life to noise, real power. It begins the moment you step back, the moment you pause and ask, is this thought even true? Once you've learned to breathe with presence, the next step is letting thoughts come and go, not by force, but by awareness. You don't need to fight your thoughts to be free of them. You just need to recognize them and let them go. You watch them rise, you smile gently, and you take a slow, steady breath. Then, you let them pass like clouds drifting across a vast sky, leaving behind no trace. And when your mind becomes truly still, something remarkable happens. You begin to see each thought clearly for what it is, which thoughts are rooted in strength and which are merely echoes. Echoes of doubt, fear, or habit. You no longer react. You start to select, to adjust, and to move forward with intention. And from that calm, conscious awareness, real wisdom is born, not as a reflex, but as the result of deliberate clarity. You're no longer just existing, you're present. And that kind of presence, unhurried, quiet, grounded, is a powerful force. Think of Jesus in the wilderness. 40 days alone. No distractions, no weapons, no noise, just stillness, prayer, and a spiritual strength so deep that even the tempter had no choice but to retreat. That's proof of an ancient truth. When your inner world is silent and steady, you don't need to prove anything. Your presence speaks for itself. Before we continue, can I ask a small favor? If this message has given you even a moment of peace or brought a slight smile, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, click subscribe too. Because when you engage with this video, you help YouTube share it with someone else who might need it, someone looking for a bit of light in their day, a touch of stillness in a loud world. Let's spread peace, wisdom, and growth together. We're only halfway through, and the next part will take you to an even deeper level, a place where strength is forged, not in noise, but in stillness. Where grace meets grit, where your foundation becomes unshakable. Stay with me. Number 6. Mental toughness. In today's fast-moving world, people often confuse tension with intelligence. They assume that rushing means efficiency, that quick reactions equal composure. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. True mental sharpness comes not from noise, but from stillness. Not from knowing everything, but from seeing clearly. And clarity requires one thing: pause. Real observation, the kind that brings deep understanding, is not something we're born with. It's a skill, a mental discipline that has to be practiced. It only shows up when you're calm enough to notice details, patient enough not to jump to conclusions, still enough to see deeply. When your inner world is quiet, the chaos outside becomes understandable, like reflections on a calm, still well. That's when wisdom arises. Not because you remembered everything, not because you thought faster, but because you saw the truth others missed, lost in their distractions. And the key to unlocking that state is breath. Before you have a single thought, you take a breath. It's been with you since the very beginning. A constant rhythm playing in the background of your life. But here's the strange part. Out of all the body's functions, breath is the only one that happens both unconsciously and under your conscious control. And when you choose to guide it slower, deeper, everything starts to change. Once you learn to guide your breath with intention, you begin to influence more than just your body. You shift your entire state of being. When you choose to slow your breath, to deepen it, you're not simply adjusting a physical habit. You're sending a message to your entire nervous system. Everything is okay. You're safe. No need to panic. And with that simple message, the mind begins to settle. Emotions soften, and clarity starts to return. One of the most powerful examples of this truth is Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor known as the Philosopher King. He led during one of Rome's most difficult periods. Constant warfare, political chaos, and widespread disease. Yet despite all of it, Marcus remained centered and composed. So, how does a man carry such immense pressure from the outside world and from within without breaking? The answer is hidden in the quiet pages of his meditations. There, he wrote the simplest of reminders to himself: inhale, exhale, return to the present. For Marcus, breath was not just a function, it was an anchor. In the chaos of leadership, it became the center line that kept him from being swept away by ego, anger, or fear. It was his breath that grounded him. It was his stillness that gave him the clarity to make wise decisions, something very few leaders in history have been able to do under similar weight. Because real mental toughness doesn't come from clenching your fists or hardening your voice. It doesn't come from raw emotion or snapping back in anger. It comes from the strength to stay still while the storm rages around you. It's the power to not react when triggered. The awareness to respond not quickly, but wisely. And it all starts with one simple skill: mastering the breath. You can read 100 self-help books. You can learn every productivity hack on the internet. But if you can't sit quietly with your breath for 5 uninterrupted minutes, then all that knowledge remains just surface-level noise. Stillness is the foundation. Breath is the tool. And from them, true resilience is born. Number 7, training the mind like a muscle. Joe walked into the meeting room and said nothing. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to speak. He simply sat and observed. He noticed the darting eyes of the manager, the slightly shaky voice of the presenter, the quiet tension in a colleague's clenched hand. Nobody around him thought much of that silence. But that very moment, that calm awareness, was where real strength was being forged. Not through words, but through presence. Because training the mind is no different from training the body. You don't build strength through chaos or speed. You build it through quiet repetition, through intentional control, through presence in the moment. And it all begins with the art of pausing. In a world that demands immediate answers, taking just 1 second before you speak, before you judge, before you act, that 1 second is a quiet revolution. It's the moment your mind stops reacting from old patterns and begins to truly observe. Just like muscles grow from slow, controlled movement, the mind sharpens when you manage each thought, each emotional reflex, with care. After learning to pause and observe like training a muscle, the next level is using that presence not to withdraw, but to act with precise awareness. Stillness, in this context, doesn't mean inaction. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's an active calm, a state where the mind becomes a finely tuned radar, scanning for signals, reading emotion. Not with urgency, but with focused clarity. Take, for example, an experienced salesperson. They don't just hear the words a client says, they listen beyond the surface. They catch slight change in tone, a forced smile, a moment of eye contact that doesn't quite match the spoken message. That kind of presence is stillness in action. It's full engagement, a quiet sharpness more powerful than any clever line. And over time, that subtle observation begins to reveal patterns. You start noticing what others miss. Like someone avoiding eye contact every time the topic of money comes up suddenly, you understand what they might be hiding. Or you recognize how you tense up around anger, and you trace it back to a past fear you hadn't yet named. Once those patterns become visible, they lose control over you. You're no longer triggered by power plays. You're no longer fooled by appearances. You stop reacting. You begin responding from clarity, not confusion. That's when you enter a different zone, the zone of quiet power. There's no need to perform, no pressure to prove. You simply know and act from that knowing. A grounded person doesn't flex with loud words. Their sharpness is in their decisions. Their poise, that's what it means to be dangerous in the Stoic sense. Calm, clear, nearly impossible to shake. But let's be honest, there are no shortcuts to reach that state. Just like building strength in a gym, it takes daily reps. Observation must be practiced. Not with words, but with attention. The way a loved one's eyes shift when you come home late. How your stomach tightens after rushed meals. The strange emotional fog after scrolling endlessly on social media. Every detail is a clue. And slowly, those clues help you trace the invisible strings that have been silently guiding your reactions, habits, and emotions for years. And then, something dawns on you. Sharp intelligence doesn't come from cramming in more information. It comes from presence, from awareness, from being right here, right now. You can sit in a crowded, noisy place and still notice what most never see because your perception has changed. Do you know why? Because that shift marks the beginning of something bigger. Number 8, the brain hack begins awareness over autopilot. Every true transformation starts when you finally wake up from autopilot, when you stop reacting unconsciously and start observing like someone who's truly awake. In today's world, autopilot is the default. Eyes open, but not really seeing. Ears hearing, but not truly listening. Everything moves fast, too much, too loud. Social media shouts constantly. Notifications buzz every few minutes. Ads squeeze themselves into every possible space, and we absorb it all without noticing what it's doing to us. Once you've woken up from autopilot, the next challenge is learning how to stay present, not in chaos, but in stillness. In a distracted state, your mind no longer functions like a sharp, focused tool. It becomes more like a cluttered room full of things, but nothing in order. Everything's there, but nothing's clear. We've been taught that intelligence means knowing more, accessing more, processing faster. But in truth, it's often the opposite. A mind overloaded with information is like a window fogged by condensation. Nothing gets through clearly. When you're pulled in 10 directions at once, your ability to think deeply drops to nearly zero, because wisdom doesn't grow in chaos. It only grows in stillness. When you reduce noise, the brain begins to work differently. It stops scattering attention and begins to concentrate fully on just one thing. And that's when the real shift happens. You begin to see. Picture a lake. When the water is agitated, all you see are ripples. But when it settles, the surface becomes a mirror. You can see the sky, the trees, even the bottom in your own reflection. The human mind works the same way. When it's constantly stimulated, nothing internal is visible. You can't recognize patterns. You can't sense what's happening inside, let alone make sense of the outside world. But when your mind becomes still, truth begins to rise. You see your weaknesses. You notice your potential. You catch unconscious patterns, and they all appear with surprising clarity, as if for the first time. But here's the hard part. Stillness is uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. They fill the silence with music, endless scrolling, distractions. Even 5 minutes of doing nothing can make the mind restless. But if you sit through that resistance, if you breathe gently, if you stay with yourself just long enough, something remarkable begins to unfold. The noise in your head fades, and you realize something powerful. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts come. Thoughts go. But you, the one observing, remain. And from that point on, you begin to wake up. You don't snap when insulted. You don't panic when plans collapse. You stop letting emotions take the driver's seat. Instead, you become the observer, calm, aware, quietly strong. You're no longer swept away by every wave. Imagine a trained fighter. He doesn't charge forward just because the crowd screams. He waits, watches, holds his ground. And when he does strike, it's not a flurry of punches, it's just one. But that one hits with precision. That is stillness in action. You've seen this in life too. The best leaders aren't the ones who dominate the conversation. They're the ones who watch the room, say little, and when they finally speak, everything shifts. The best learners aren't the ones who scribble endlessly. They listen deeply. They aren't easily distracted, and they remember after hearing something only once. Stillness creates a presence that people feel. When you master it, you don't just think better. You act less, but each move has more impact. Important decisions feel lighter. Focus becomes effortless. Because stillness doesn't slow you down. It sharpens you. Once stillness sharpens your focus and presence, you begin to see life differently, and your mind starts to function on a whole new level. You begin to learn faster not because you're doing more, but because your mind is no longer clogged with noise. Emotions may still arise, but they no longer control you. You stop resisting life. Instead, you start moving with it, flexible, but grounded. Try this. Sit in stillness for 5 uninterrupted minutes. No phone, no task, just breathe and observe. Then ask yourself, are you living fully awake or still on autopilot? Share your experience in the comments. And if this message resonates with you, follow for more on how to build a sharp, aware mind starting with stillness. Number 9, the upgrade begins. There comes a critical point in personal growth that many people miss, not because they're lazy, but because they're distracted. It's not found in another book, a new certificate, or an expensive seminar. It begins the moment you realize something deeper. That presence, the ability to be fully aware in the present moment, is the true foundation of intelligence, discipline, and strength. From that realization, the path of mental upgrade changes entirely. It's no longer about feeding your brain more information. It's about inner mastery, about creating space, about stillness. Intelligence doesn't grow in noise. It reveals itself when you stop, breathe, and begin to observe the details you used to miss. It's in this moment you learn to step outside of yourself, to watch your own mind, emotions, and impulses from the outside, like an audience watching a play. And from that new vantage point, everything changes. A truly intelligent person isn't the one who thinks the most. It's the one who knows which thoughts deserve attention and which are better left alone. They don't act from fear. They don't rush with anger. They wait. They let the storm pass and then move with precision. They understand that a chaotic mind filled with judgment, anxiety, and comparison is simply untrained. It's a symptom of disconnection. Presence is not forcing focus. It is a skill, one that grows through silence, through breath, through stillness. When you sit quietly and follow your breath, you're no longer trapped inside your thoughts. You stop trying to control them or chase them. You simply observe, steady, aware, awake. And from that place, your actions shift. No longer driven by emotion, they come from conscious intention. Your movements are fewer but far more powerful. You are no longer rushed by the world. You move with clarity, peace, and purpose. Think of a surgeon, a pilot, a crisis negotiator. In their world, one poor decision has serious consequences. That's why they don't just act, they pause. They breathe. They check inward before responding, not out of hesitation, but because they've trained themselves to operate from awareness, not emotion. And the same principle applies to everyday life. Before sending that angry message, before reacting to that rude comment, pause, breathe, watch what's happening inside you, like clouds drifting across the sky. You'll realize most of what you wanted to do in that moment doesn't really need to be done. Because the nature of the mind is to produce thoughts, but your power lies in choosing which ones to follow and which to let pass. Once you realize that most of your reactions are driven by unconscious thoughts, the next level is this: realizing you are not those thoughts. You are not the voice in your head. You are not the emotion that rises. You are the one watching it all. When this truth shifts from theory to direct experience through the quiet act of observation, you enter a new level of self-mastery. You're no longer ruled by moods. You're no longer pulled by fear, judgment, or old emotional habits. Instead, you start seeing with clarity, and that clarity is true intelligence. When you act from this deep stillness, you become dangerous, not in a harmful way, but in the Stoic sense. You are unshakable. You are not easily manipulated. You don't respond on impulse, you choose. And every choice is backed by calm awareness. You stop drifting with the current of life. You begin shaping your own direction. One breath at a time, one decision at a time. Fully intentional. Upgrading yourself doesn't begin with buying something new or chasing another strategy. It begins the moment you sit still. Turn inward and choose to truly look at what's going on inside, without distraction, without running, and you don't look away again. Because wisdom isn't about memorizing facts or filling your mind with theories. It's about learning how to see clearly without distortion. When the mind is calm, everything starts to fall into place. Choices become simpler. Judgment improves. You stop following the crowd because you know your own direction. That's what makes you dangerous. Not aggressive, but formidable, someone who's grounded, hard to throw off balance. Throughout history, warriors, Zen monks, philosophers, they've all practiced stillness. Why? Because they understood that true strength doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within, from discipline over one's mind and emotion. So now, let me ask you, can you sit still for 5 full minutes without touching your phone? Leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear your experience. And if you found this video valuable, if even a part of it spoke to you, do me a favor. Like this video. Share it with someone who could use a little calm in their day, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because we're just getting started. In the next video, it's waiting for you right at the end of this one. Keep watching.